so 7 o'clock. I think I'm going to get started. So, what's up everybody? It's Jags Money here, and I'm going to be doing another discussion video, this time on stages. I'm going to be doing this in 2 parts. We will be doing, the first part will just be about the stages that are legal right now in most P+ rule sets, which is Big 3, which is Smashville, Battlefield, Pokemon Stadium, Green Hill, Dreamland, Delfino's Secret, Fountain of Dreams, Final Destination, Wario Ware, and Metal Cavern. Obviously, this is the old picture of Metal Cavern, but we are just going to assume that it is PMBR Stage Fix Metal Cavern that is in P+, and pretty much be going from that assumption. And the rest we will be going over in the second part of the video, but I'll be talking more about that once we get there. So, so we'll go pretty much from top to bottom here. No, I kind of like going from bottom to top, but I think the top is pretty self-explanatory. Pretty much everybody is in pretty much full agreement that Big 3 stages are pretty much S tier, or at least debatably S tier. For me, is Smashville. Smashville is easily my go-to in friendlies or anything like that. I know Smashville gets like the stigma of, you know, it's FD half the time, but I don't know. I just never really got that. I think this platform comes into play more than enough to vary it up from that situation. The only issue I have with Smashville is that in some matchups, when the platform is on the far left and far right side, it allows for a little bit of camping if you're not able to challenge from that angle. But other than that, I think that Smashville is one of the most fair stages in the game. There's very little cheese on it besides maybe getting killed by platform on the side and getting killed really early. But honestly, I don't really see that nearly as much as you would see that in like Smash 4, where people were like debatably wanting the stage gone because of the platform assist kills. I honestly think in this game, assist kills are a little bit more interesting, and the setups for them have a little bit more nuance than Smash 4, where you just kind of back through somebody at the ledge and it would kill them at 40. I think there's a lot more nuance in this game when it comes to setting stuff up like that from the moving platform. Once again, it's my go-to in friendlies. It's one I will always pick. If I'm out of region, I think it's one of those things where it's region dependent. The other stage that I would say is very region dependent is this one, which will also be my S tier. Not really. I wouldn't put these in order per se, because a lot of people have a good point for Pokemon Stadium being like #1 best stage in the game. It's symmetrical at all times, which gives a little bit less variance during play. It's not, you know, it doesn't give you that it's FD half the time thing, which is perfectly fine. Blast zones are pretty fair, though the ceiling's a little bit lower, and that helps a lot of the PM characters that live for a long time or have good stalling up in the air where they can make it back down. And it's not too, and it obviously doesn't have the transformations, which is what kind of everybody wants. It's basically Pokemon Stadium 1, but without transformations, and the Blast Zones are way less versatile, or not versatile, way less volatile, especially off the top. Though the ceiling is lower than it's one of the lower ceilings, but it's not absurdly low or anything. And the fact that there's no top platform means you don't get a platform assist up there either, especially without transformations, because on Pokemon Stadium 1, there's plenty of times where you could get a platform assist up into the top blast zone off of a high ledge or the rock or something like that. And then the lower ceiling was even more of a factor. In this one, the ceiling's higher than Pokemon Stadium 1, and the lack of a top platform, because it's always in this form, means it's a little bit less volatile and makes it a little bit characters like Fox and characters like Pikachu are still gonna like this stage, and Lucas and things like that, who kill with up smash and have really good vertical killing like that, are still going to like this stage. But it's not so bad that like it's a stage that most people are going to ban in those matchups. Maybe they'll strike it, you know, before first game, but it's definitely not going to be banned or anything like that. So those are the only 2 stages I would say are S tier, and the next one in order pretty much. This one will be Battlefield. It's the last of the Big 3, so of course it's going to go here. I just don't think it's as neutral as Smashville and PS2. I do think it's still the Big 3, and if we had, and a lot of people have always argued for the 3-stage stage list where you just have these 3, and I see why. Battlefield is really, really, really neutral in comparison to a lot of things, but in comparison to these 2, the biggest factor being the top platform. Top platform is especially in a game like PM where a lot of characters can really utilize top platform, especially characters like Snake, who utilize a strong platform really, really well. You know, the stage can come a little bit annoying in a lot of cases. Hell, even in Melee, you see a lot of people abusing top platform and stuff like that. Falcos and Falcon stomping and stuff like that, they'll abuse top platform. And the problem is a lot of characters can't reach top platform conveniently. Some characters can get up there in, you know, a double jump. Some characters can't get up there in a double jump. And that, you know, means top platform can be really effective against those characters. Or you're so good at locking down top platform that getting up there in and of itself is a huge risk. Something like Snake, where you're really good at staying up there, throwing down hitboxes with bombs and grenades and C4, and just keeping yourself up there and locking them down. If you ever try to challenge you can always try to go for either grenade hold or stomping as you fastfall stomp as you come down. You have a lot of ways to just lock it down. And I think that keeps it from being in the S tier with the other two, but it's still a lot better and a lot more playable than, you know, even the stages that are listed down there that, you know, I'll be talking about in the second half of the video. So I do give Battlefield the A tier spot for sure. Now this next one I will now once again I want to preface this by saying this is all my opinion. I try to be as objective as possible, but it is my opinion at the end of the day, and this one is definitely where my opinion is going to come into play, and this is Green Hill Zone. Green Hill Zone, it's kind of got the Smashville factor where, you know, people are going to say, oh, it's like FD half the time, yada yada, and it is, but the platform moving upwards as well allows for a little bit more. You can be a little bit safer with it. It's not always going to be in range for somebody to really attack it from, especially when it's up near the top left and top right, and it can definitely facilitate recoveries, and it can make covering those angles a little bit more interesting. And especially when it's on the low point, it's actually kind of got the FOD factor where it's low enough that you can kind of hit it with a lot of grounded moves. You can even, you know, some characters I bet could probably grab through it while grounded and things like that, or grab you from the platform if you are grounded. But because it's small, it allows for more engagement. It's kind of why people like Yoshi's Story, because the stage is small and because it's got walls. It allows for more interesting. It allows for more engagement in general because of the smaller size of the stage, without being intrusive. And what I mean by that is, like, there's a lot of stages that are small, but the problem is they're small and they're cluttered, like Fountain. I think a lot of people don't like Fountain because Fountain's a smaller stage, as in, like, the place you can actually fight on. The stage itself is pretty small, but it's cluttered with those platforms that can be almost in your way a lot of the time, whether you want to move around or whether you want to drop from the platform or a platform raises up as you're doing something. So it facilitates a lot of engagement, but the engagement can be a little bit janky sometimes, whereas you don't really get that problem with Green Hill Zone. Green Hill Zone, you're not going to see too many jank engagements unless you have that platform come down at the perfect spot on the bottom and something weird happens, but for the most part it's going to be pretty standard, and I think that's why people really like it, or that's why I personally really like it. And the walls allow for more interesting recoveries, and especially by characters that don't really abuse. There's a lot of characters that can abuse, you know, Beerverse stuff and make it back from like crazy places, but honestly I think that makes PM interesting. I think that's stuff that you post on Twitter and, you know, your normies are going to be like, oh my god, that's crazy. And while it may be really, really dumb in the moment to try and play against, I think all in all it kind of adds for really, really interesting stuff that promotes technical gameplay, because that stuff is pretty hard at times, like the Lucario wall jumps, Lucario Aura Sphere wall jumps, and the stuff like that. I think promotes more interesting character knowledge and gameplay and stuff like that. As much as annoying as it is to fight against, I think that it gives itself a little bit more depth. And the platform can still be used to dodge projectiles and things like that. It's got more utility than a lot of people realize. A lot of people try to play this stage like it's FD 2.0 but small, and you can't really play it like that. At least not, you know, you got to be a little bit more nuanced with it. But honestly, I really like Green Hill Zone. The blast zones aren't too volatile either. The ceiling is actually surprisingly high. And platform assists aren't too crazy because of that, but the side blast zones are really small, and that helps with and that gets kills a little bit earlier. But, you know, so that kind of makes it a little bit more of a neutral stage, hence why it's one of the starters now. Pretty much at every tournament, it's going to be your starter small stage, just because it is a smaller stage that does have the pros of allowing for more engagement and allowing for those characters that really want to be up in your face to get there quicker. But it's not too cluttered or anything like that to make it almost a chore to play on. So that's why I put it right there. Let's see. Let's see here. What should I go next with? I think I'll move down to the next tier. Yeah, I think I'll move down to the next tier. So next up, controversial pick here. Gonna have Dreamland. A lot of people don't like Dreamland because big stage, slow game, herder, and there's a lot of matchups that can result in that kind of gameplay. There's a lot of floaties in this game, a lot of floaties that, you know, unless they have a really, really strong kill confirm, are mostly based around edge guarding, and they're not going to be killing you super early, and that's going to allow for games to go longer and campier and all this stuff. There's a lot of matchups, though, where this stage is really cool, and the space kind of gives a little bit more nuance to certain matchups. Instead of forcing engagements all the time, you can really use the space. Characters that utilize space well are going to thrive here, but not necessarily camp well. You can camp on it, and the top platform is going to have the same benefits as something like Battlefield's top platform, where you can really establish a space there and use it to come down at an advantage. It's not too crazy, as well as obviously gotta love the new aesthetic on it. Back in 3.02, this kind of the HD Dreamland didn't even exist, and the visual upgrade is fantastic. It surpasses anything official Smash games have done with the stage visually, while still keeping the feel of the stage in terms of gameplay. The newer games have made Dreamland kind of small for some reason. Dreamland has always been really big. It wasn't super big in 64, but it was still a pretty big stage. Though stages in Smash 64 were kind of big in general, like Sector Z and stuff like that were kind of just generally big. But Dreamland was still a pretty large stage in terms of blast zones. Melees, they were absolutely gigantic. And in PM 3.5 and base 3.6, that was still the case. And ever since the PMBR update, they have reduced the blast zones to make them, I think it's 10 units smaller in both directions. It might be 5 units on the ceiling. I don't remember the exact numbers. But they did reduce it to kind of normalize the stages, and I want to go over that. A lot of people were really against the PMBR changes because of the idea that this would be reducing the benefit of counterpicking. When there's a difference between normalizing and condensing the differences. You know what I mean? They didn't need to be. Basically, what I'm saying is like how do I put it? I'm trying to think. How do I put it? Basically, I don't think it was that big a deal. I think that the normalizing of stages made them a little bit less volatile in their respective areas. I think that nobody liked dying on Wario Ware at 40 because of some jank stuff. I don't think anybody liked living on Dreamland to 200 because you just barely didn't touch the blast zone. With those reductions and with those expansions, with the expansion of like Wario Ware blast zones, it makes that a little bit less of a problem. You're not those blast zones are still big and are definitely still small for their respective kinds of state. From the normal, like WarioWare's blast zones are still really tiny in comparison to your normal size stages, and Dreamlands and Delfino's are still big in comparison to your regular size stages, but they're less so. They're a little bit less extreme. And I think that's fine. I think it was perfectly fine. And honestly, I really like the change. I don't think anyone's really been complaining about it. There was a lot of complaints when it first happened, and people would be like, "Oh, I lived that because of New Dreamland," or "I lived that because of New WarioWare," or whatever. Or "I died because of New Dreamland," or "I lived because of New WarioWare." But I honestly think that's died down. I think people are perfectly fine with the standardizations made to the blast zones in particular. I'll be talking about two of the other PMBR changes soon. But I honestly think Dreamland is perfectly fine. I don't think it's that crazy. I will be going over the other big stage that is a lot worse later on. Spoiler alert. But moving on, I'm going to be going to Metal Cavern. Metal Cavern's a little weird. I think we all expected this stage to be a bit more likable than it is, because we all really like this stage right here. Yoshi's Brawl looks cool. We all wanted to see how the layout would work in a more competitive setting when we actually got it normalized. Basically, new Metal Cavern, if you guys don't know, is basically just Yoshi's Island Brawl, but with no slants and no curvature on the stage itself, and without the ghost platforms on the left and right. It's basically Yoshi's Brawl standardized. with the Metal Cavern aesthetic, of course. And exactly Smashville Blast Zones, I believe. I may be remembering wrong, but I believe that it has exactly the Smashville Blast Zones. So Blast Zones are not really a big deal, and that's one of the reasons why I put it in the B tier. The Blast Zones are not volatile. They're not weird in any way, and I think that gives it a little bit more consistency, a little bit more familiarity is what I would say there. A little bit more familiarity. You're not, it's not going to surprise you in any regard. The platform is really big, and it's surprisingly higher than you would think. I wasn't really expecting that when I first heard this was going to be legal. When you did, it is oddly high. It's slightly higher than you think, but I honestly think that's not too big a deal. I think it is an interesting platform height to work around. It's not. It is a different platform height than I'm particularly used to. It actually may be the same as another platform. Quote me if I'm wrong. If this platform matches another platform height on another stage, then I'm just stupid. But I want to say this is actually higher than the Smashville platform. It's higher than the Brawl side platforms. It may be slightly higher than the Dreamland side platforms. So it's got a janky height. It can interfere with certain projectiles, like Game & Watch Bacon and stuff like that. Get interfered by that platform. And the platform being long makes it really hard to tech chase on. One of the pros of sharking a platform is the amount of limited options that person's going to have. Where if they're towards the right side of the platform, that you can play towards the right side of that platform while sharking it, because they can't go, if they tech right, they can only go so far, and you can cover second place at the same time. And then you can kind of say that if I play on this side and drift to the left side of the platform, they will most likely tech that way, because they only have space to the left, and therefore you can cover it based on a read. The problem with this platform being huge is that you don't have that a lot of the time. You'll end up with them near the middle, and you can't really have that same bait and that same advantage. So a lot of times you'll find that people are having to wave land on the platform and try and get a regrab tech chase to extend a combo, because sharking under it may not be the most consistent way to get the punish unless you have a read, and that's perfectly fine. But it does mean that the platform's a little bit less valuable to trap somebody on from underneath. And obviously because the platform's so long, it means shield dropping is going to be viable at pretty much any part of the stage. You can pretty much shield drop at any point from that, because the platform covers most of the stage. There is not a space where you're not going to be shield drop punished, and there's not a space where you can really play around that too much if you're not consistently going to be looking for and punishing the shield drops. And the only other thing I would say, until, I think they finally normalized it, but before, in the old P Plus or the old PMBR version, the sides of the stage were a little bit janky. You used to be able to go right through the right side in like a weird way. It was really consistent with like Rob and Sheik and stuff. You could go through the crystal and stuff like that. And even before that was going on, the left side was flat and the right side was not necessarily flat like the left side is. So it was a little bit weird to interact with those ledges at different sides. But since then, it has been normalized, and both sides, while maybe looking different in certain builds, are the same stage collision. So it makes that a little bit more consistent. And that's kind of why I moved it up. There's been consistency adjustments. I do think there needs to be a color tone change or something like that, because snake mines are still a little bit annoying to see on that stage. They used to get caught underneath some of the textures. Things like that made it a little bit more frustrating to fight characters like Snake on because of that. But I think that stuff's been changed as of right now. Quote me once again, I may be wrong, but I haven't had that issue in a while. So, to each their own. But so I think Metal Cavern's gotten to be one of the better stages. It can still be a little bit annoying with that platform height, depending on what character you play and how you can interact with that. But for all intents and purposes, I think Metal Cavern is actually a good addition to the stage list. I think it is a great addition to the stage list. That I think honestly is a positive. And that's because it's better than a lot of the stages that have been on the stage list for a long time, and I will be going to that right now. So, next up on the list, we are going to be talking about Wario Ware. So the last three stages have their own problems. Wario Ware, honestly, I will be talking about Yoshi's story in a little bit. I think Wario Ware is necessary, and why it's necessary is because it's a small stage. We need more small stages on the list, but I think it's necessary to have over Yoshi's story because it's a different platform layout. A lot of people have talked about it. Tri-plats, think about it, in Melee, tri-plats dominate the entire stage list. There isn't much variance from tri-plats besides Pokemon and FD. That's pretty much all you're going to get in terms of non-tri-plat stages in that game. So I think having variety adds a little bit more. If you want to try plat stage, there are plenty. If you're looking for a top platform, there are plenty of stages that allow you to do that. WarioWare gives a unique platform layout that I think adds more to the game in terms of stage picking and counter picking. The things that people don't like about WarioWare is the layout itself. Some people just do not like the quad plat layout because of mainly because of the two top platforms, giving a little bit too much hindrance to some some circle camping strategies, and giving some characters way too many options to recover to. Like, for instance, if Fox is a little bit far off stage for you to go out and hit him, if you grab ledge, he goes to the top platform, and most characters can't get there quick enough. If you try to cover high, he goes to the ledge. Things like that. It gives too many options that you can't cover, which I think top plats did anyway in a lot of cases, but it was a little bit less frequent because that top platform is in the middle of the stage, and reaching that from a lot of recoveries wasn't as easy, whereas this makes that a lot easier since they're near the ledge. Obviously, the two high platforms mean on a small stage like that, that platform assist kills are going to be extremely common, and they can be. Reaching that high part of the stage is pretty easy, especially if you're carrying people from a side of the stage to another. You're more likely to have that platform to actually help you combo, whereas having it in the middle of the stage means that if someone's DIing out, you're not going to be able to reach them in a lot of cases unless your character has great aerial drift. Shoutouts to Wario. But and on top of all that, the walls do not help. Everyone hates the walls. Everyone hates walls in general because of characters like Zero Suit and characters like Mario that can just use the walls for infinite recoveries. And now in WarioWare, I think that's less. I think it's less of a problem because the stage is already pretty small, so you're not going to see that too much on WarioWare. Besides characters that can't go down far enough to get them, but I think in most cases it's not too big of a problem. I think it's kind of one of the more exacerbated things about the stage. But I think more so the platform layout is what people don't like, and that's kind of the inherent evil of it, is that I think the stage is necessary because it has a unique layout, but a lot of people just don't like the layout in general. That's why it's going to be in the C tier. I think the layout is a little bit odd. I think it's a good idea, and I think it probably needs to stay in the stage list in some capacity because it is a different layout that characters can take advantage of and allow for interesting engagement. But I do inherently think tri-plat is better than quad-plat in terms of consistency and in terms of, how we kind of like to play the game. Controlling center stage and being off stage, having less options. I think the two side plats being near the ledge give it a little bit too much agency to off stage recover at different heights, especially if you have a more versatile recovery. And obviously hitting through platforms, Marth main, yada yada, all that good stuff. So WarioWare, I like WarioWare. I think there's a lot of matchups where Wario can be really fun. But in general, even as Marth, I don't really like to take people here just because it's too versatile it's too volatile for me. Even with the PMBR expansion of the Blast Zones, I think it's a little bit too volatile for me to want it to like take people here unless I know it's just cake. But moving on, we talk about the next one here, and I'm going to be talking about Fountain. Fountain, this is like the problems I said before earlier in the video. Fountain has a consistency problem. So a lot of people like these smaller stages because they give you the agency of engagement. It's too small to run away on. It is too small to run away on. You need to engage your opponent in a lot of matchups, and people like that, of course. Now, problem with Fountain of Dreams is it makes that positive almost a negative because a lot of that engagement is going to be weird. It's going to be inconsistent. It's going to be odd in a way. It can mess your tech skill up just because the stage is acting in a weird way you didn't expect. Now, the counter argument to that would be just have better quick thinking skills that allow you to adapt to wherever the platform happens to be. But a lot of times it's not possible. Not everyone's keeping track of the timer on when these platforms are going to rise and fall. You could go for a tech away, and then the platform rises up, stopping your tech roll halfway through, and then you get punished, even though they did not necessarily cover a tech away. That kind of stuff that you really can't, unlike Yoshi's where a lot of people can keep track of where that guy's going to be based on a number. It's hard to do that on Fountain. You never really see people do it. And it really makes characters that have great shield drop or great platform dropping options really strong. Falcon, for instance, even though in Melee he is seen as this being one of his weaker stages, I think in this game it's actually insane. Because his platform dropping options are so strong with platform drop up air that, hell, even platform drop first frame knee kind of stuff that it makes him really absurd to fight while you're underneath some of those platforms. If you happen to shield a Nair and he lands on a platform that's just slightly above your head, he can then platform drop up air you and then go into basically whatever he wants. And if you're on the platform, forget about it. He could do land on platform up air, fall through up air, jump Nair, hit you with both hits of Nair, and then fade away, and you have to eat all of that. You have to eat the entire thing. There is nothing you can do about that. And if you happen to get shield poked during that Nair and he doesn't fade back, forget about it. You're fucking dead. So the stage can be really, really crazy with characters like that have ridiculous shield platform coverage like that are fast and can cover most of the platform, that make you have to respect it a little bit too much. On top of that, the walls are a little bit more obnoxious on this level because the lower blast zone is so incredibly low, unlike stuff like Wario Ware that I mentioned before. So even though Wario Ware and Green Hill have the walls, the blast zone's way higher, or the lower blast zone is a lot higher up, meaning that you can't go as low and still make it back. You can only go so low before you need to start using that wall if you want to use it at all. In Fountain, there's a lot of characters that can just infinitely use that wall because it goes so low. The lower blast zone is incredibly low. So someone like Mario could, you know, go super low to the point where they're far dead on Green Hill or WarioWare, enough to drift to that lower wall and then up B, wall jump up B, and now they're back. And because he's so low, there's nothing you can really do about it. He's so low that most characters can't even go that low to challenge him, and therefore he can kind of just do it. And unless you have a move that can really stuff up B really well, or you time your invincibility perfectly, which is kind of hard against Mario's up B, it's really good, you're going to get clipped and he's back, and it's just really hard to stop that. Same goes for Zero Suit. Same goes for anyone with that crazy wall jump shenanigans. It just exacerbates it, even though the wall isn't, you know, a box like WarioWare or Green Hill or the stage I'll be talking about, you know, soon. It does go so low that it's kind of obnoxious. The high ceiling does help in terms of platform-assisted kills. It makes them a little bit less volatile. But it's kind of weird because the stage is so small and the side blast zones are so small that the top blast zone being so big can kind of be a little bit weird. But like I said, the main gripe that people have is with the platforms and the inconsistency that goes with that on a small stage that you're going to be engaging so much with your opponent in. You're not going to be camping much on Fountain unless you're abusing the top platform because the stage is so small horizontally. So kind of what I said before. Just to summarize, Fountain of Dreams is a little bit lower because platforms are annoying to deal with. Stage goes so low that it makes some recoveries really impossible to deal with, and a lot easier. Someone like Game & Watch can basically, you know, unlike other stages where they go so low that they can't even see themselves, so you kind of have to gauge that. On this stage, you can see Game & Watch the entire time. He can easily measure it out and get a sweet spot for free. Things like that just really don't make Fountain a likable stage. I would say it's a good stage, and I think it probably should stay legal if we're keeping the amount of stages we have right now. I think the small stage is necessary in a game like this, but I do agree that it is easily the worst small stage in the game. On the legal stages that we have, it is the worst, in my opinion. So moving on, we will be talking about the evil stages. These two bad boys. First, which is better than the other, is what we all like to say. And I'm going to go Delfino's. I'm going to say Delfino's is better than Final Station, but I'll get to that. So Delfino's, everybody hates Delfino's. It's like the biggest meme out of all the stages is how much we hate Delfino's Secret. There's a lot of people that are weird and like Delfino's Secret, but we all hate them anyway. So let's talk about why the stage sucks. So first off, it's huge. Not only is the stage itself huge, but the blast zones are also huge. So it just means camping is very easy, and it is easy for you to live. The platform heights. Now, I want to talk about the difference between 3.6 and PMBR Delfinos, or P plus Delfinos, whatever you want to call it. 3.6 Delfinos had the not random, but the different stage layouts that it could become, and they kind of made it a little bit weird. They kind of gave it the FOD problem, not the FOD problem, but they gave it a different problem, that there's some layouts that you just could not deal with. Like some characters you just weren't going to do anything on. And that kind of made it a problem where it gave it I would say a Pokemon Stadium 1 problem. There was a lot of times where you just have to wait out the platform transformation because it was just something you couldn't deal with. You'd go back and you'd start shooting projectiles or whatever to wait for the platform to come down so you can interact with them again. And that made the stage obviously one of the most annoying to deal with, especially in tournaments or friendlies or anything like that. On top of that, it was random which transformation you were going to get, what the platforms would give you on the next rotation. So it made it, once again, inconsistency is a big problem here when it comes to these stages. Inconsistency is what makes them a little bit less fun to play on, and I don't like saying fun, but it makes them a little bit more frustrating to play on in a competitive setting, I would say. On top of all of that, the walls, there's a wall problem on Delfinos where it does go decently low. The blast zone goes pretty low for all intents and purposes. Not as low as fountains, but it goes pretty low. And the box structure means that it's actually easier to get to the wall because it is that lower wall is closer to the blast zone, meaning it is easier to reach it and therefore utilize it in your recovery. Meaning it can be more annoying and more frequent to deal with a wall jump recovery than Fountain, because Fountain's walls curve inward, and by the bottom it is extremely condensed into that little tiny pole at the bottom, whereas Delfino's is just a big box, so getting to that wall can be a lot easier. So it means that you're going to be dealing with more of those frustrating wall recoveries more often on Delfino's, making that more of a problem. Now I want to talk about the P+ improvements. They reduced the blast zones, meaning that you weren't going to live as long. Same kind of adjustments they made to Dreamland. I think they only reduced the ceiling by 5 units. Once again, I think one of these was only reduced by 5 units instead of 10. But basically they made the stage a little bit smaller, make it a little bit less volatile in the other direction, in the living too long direction. Still going to have that problem because it is a bigger stage, depending on character and matchup and things like that, but made it a little bit less of a problem. I wouldn't say it's not a problem, but it is a little bit less of a problem. And they made it into a reverse fountain. So what they decided to do was, unlike Fountain, where the top platform stays where it is and the side platforms move, the side platforms stay where they are and the top platform moves. So I honestly think that is a better version of Fountain because more consistency. What do I mean by that? In Fountain, you have 2 platforms that move at 2 different timings, so they are not level, and there are different timings where they are moving. On Delfino's, you have 2 platforms that are standard and 1 that is moving, so it is a lot easier to keep track of and a lot easier to deal with because most of the stage is more of the stage is consistent than on Fountain. So I do give it points there, but the other points do take away from it. The fact that it is a big stage means that circle camping and things like that are way more excessive. Living longer means that games take longer, and obviously people just don't like games taking too long. TOs don't like it. Most of the players don't like it. You know how it is. Makes camping like that a little bit frustrating. And the walls and things like that are going to make this stage one of the more frustrating stages to play on. Now, I want to defend Delfinos for a second. To all my Delfino lovers out there, I'll defend Delfinos for a second. I'm a Marth player. I'm obviously not going to like Delfinos because that stage is not good for my character, but I will defend Delfinos. Delfinos is a stage that every other Smash game would take in a heartbeat. Like, if this stage was in a actual Smash Brothers game, this would be legal 99% of the time. The stage has no hazards. It is not as weird as some of the other legal stages in the newer games, and it is honestly pretty low in terms of jank level in comparison to some of the stages in some of the newer games that were legal or are legal presently. So I will defend Delfinos and say that it is a great stage to have in a competitive setting when compared to the official Smash Games' stage lists. But this is Project M. We are capable of pretty much making any stage we want legal and any layout we want exist. And therefore, while Delfinos is on a high pedestal in terms of viability in comparison to the actual Smash series, that's a pretty low bar because a lot of these stages are pretty bad in terms of competitive viability in Smash Brothers to begin with. So to once again drag Delfinos through the mud again. But I will say, we all like to say it's bad, but we all kind of know that a lot of the other games would take Delfinos in a heartbeat on their legal stage list if it existed. But moving on to last but not least, this piece of shit, Final Destination. Fuck Final Destination. I think it is, obviously it is the cornucopia of casual competitive matches, of course, but we all kind of know that this stage kind of sucks. One, it's huge huge horizontally, so it's obviously going to allow a lot of running away keeping your distance. Now on Final Destination, unlike platform circle camping, Final Destination, you can trap your opponent in the corner as long as their aerial options aren't super good. So getting out of the corner is a lot harder, and that's kind of what makes this stage a bit frustrating. Your ability to get out of the corner is really dependent on your ability to play the air game. If your character can play an air game without platforms necessarily, then they can get out of the corner pretty easily. If they cannot, then you are kind of screwed depending on what matchup you are stuck against. And a lot of times if you're on FD, the matchup there is probably not going to be too good. I'd say it's one of the most frequently banned stages in a lot of matchups. There's a lot of matchups where this stage just becomes kind of dumb, like DK against Spaceys, or anything. It could turn matchups that are bad into good ones just because of its flat stage and its ability for one character to just completely slaughter the other one off of a grab or one interaction. So of course, Final Destination is going to be one of the least favorite stages in the game. Probably the most frequently banned in a lot of matchups. It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't really need to go over Final Destination all that much. I think we all kind of understand why Final Destination is not the best stage competitively, and not one. I wouldn't say it's bad competitively. I would say it's one of the least fair in a game like PM, where punish games are extremely big, and people can blow you up off of one interaction without, if there is not any platforms to get in the way. This stage can basically be a one-hit wonder when it comes to how many times you need to get hit and to die, and that can be a problem in and of itself. So here is the final Jags Money tier list for the stages in PM in terms of their quality as a tournament stage. On the stage list, I think once again, I think all of these stages have a place on the stage list as of right now. I don't think we're at a point where we need to be removing any stages. I think that's kind of crazy. I think we've experimented with most of the other stages on the stage list down here that were viable at some point. I think at this point we would be reducing stages and not adding them or switching them now. I think we're past that point. I think the time for experimenting is over, and I think we have figured out a pretty good stage list for PM tournaments that most people can agree on are pretty good. Obviously, I think Final Destination kind of sucks, but it's one of those stages that I think is a necessary evil in terms of counterpicking and things like that. Obviously, counterpick should be important, so having Final Destination there at least to soak up a ban is something that I find important to Smash Brothers as a whole. I think stage counterpicking is an important part of the game. I don't think we should lose that just because people don't like getting chain grabbed as much as I am a Marth main and obviously have my own bias to that. But besides that, this is final tier list for me. It's obviously nice and symmetrical, 2 per each category, and how much I despise them in the competitive setting. So now that we have touched on that, I am going to be doing with these stages down here. Most of these stages have been legal at some point in time, right? Most of them have been legal at some point. I am going to be throwing away the stages that have never been legal and never will be legal in the banned forever category. We all kind of know which stages these are. So those I'm not even going to talk about. Pretty self-explanatory why those aren't legal. I'm not even going to touch on it. Now I'm going to recategorize this because that was based on the stages, all the stages being legal. Basically, these tiers are closer together in terms of difference. There's not as far apart. So I'm going to be condensing them a little bit. So Battlefield, I'm going to move up to here. Green Hill will stay in its own tier. Wario Ware will move up to here. And this will move up to here. So now I'm going to be adding these stages into giving these circumstances. I think this is where these stages lie in terms of this. Actually, I'll move FD up. So this is where they kind of lie right now. When we expand the list so the difference is wider, right? The difference between tiers now is a little bit wider. So we'll be going from there. First off, I want to talk about one of the more recent additions we made to the stage list. In 3.6, Bowser's Castle was added to Project M 3.6. Obviously, the base version of the stage is not competitively viable in any scenario because of the thwomps on the left and right side with the breakaway platforms. Of course, we are talking about the competitively viable version with the 3 platforms. I think this stage fucking sucked. I think Bowser's Castle was horrible as a competitive stage. I honestly don't think it would have been that bad in doubles because it's a big stage. But the problem is the platforms are so odd. The platform layout does not help anyone. It is horrible. It'll be on the video. Don't worry about it. You can go back to the VOD when it's uploaded on YouTube, and you can screenshot the original. I don't really care. But this stage sucked. One, the background is disgusting. I don't like the background. In terms of its glow, there's a little bit too much going on in the background. I do like what they did. The texturing is fantastic. I appreciate the work that was put into the stage, and in a casual level, it's a really nice looking stage. But in a competitive setting, you're going to be playing on these stages a lot, and I don't want to see that all the time. There was even a blue version. Someone made a blue version with blue lava because of the visual problem it was giving people. So that's just to go to show what the problem it created. Now, once again, I don't want to shit on the guy who made the stage. I don't know who it was. I couldn't tell you who made the stage, the textures and everything. But I want to give them credit because the stage texture work and the creative work put into the stage to make a Bowser Castle kind of stage is really cool, and I like it. But it has the Norfair problem, where the lava is just... the lava in this engine does not look good, and I don't want to be looking at it all the time, which is what you're going to be doing in a competitive setting. You're going to be playing on the stages a lot, and that's going to just exacerbate the problem. So that was that's a big problem. But the other problem is platforms. The platforms were so bad. Even the side platforms were extremely high. So this allowed for tons of platform camping, especially with characters that could not get up to those platforms. A lot of characters couldn't get up there with full hop aerials. Like, it was just too high. You would need, double jump air dodge to get up to them, and it was just incredible how high you need to go just for side platforms. The top platform was even higher, but it was like not as high compared to the side platforms. So I just never found the stage good. There was even some jank with like so there was these little spikes on the sides below where you see the these little breakaway platforms from the original version. They'd be around right here where these chains are. These little spikes. They're just visual things. But I think if I remember correctly, these spikes were offset on the Z-axis, so most things would not hit them. But for some reason, if I remember correctly, once again, quote me if I'm wrong, but I remember that PK Thunder would actually interact with that spike because of the Z-axis, because the PK Thunder would actually extend into the Z-axis that far, and it would actually hit it and then kill you. Quote me if I'm wrong, but I think that was a thing. It was only for the, I think it was only for the PK kids. I don't remember that happening to anyone else, but I remember that someone telling me that. So if that's true, that makes it even worse. But other than that, it just wasn't, nobody really liked it, and it fell off of popularity really quickly. When 3.6 came out, we did try it. Even in South Florida, we tried it, but it was just not something that stuck, wasn't used often, and even when it was used, it was not enjoyed. Nobody really liked having it on the stage list. So moving on, I'm going to put this one right here. I don't think it's as bad as Bowser's Castle, but it's still pretty bad. Now, pros of the stage. One, it's small, and it's got pretty symmetrical ledges. Promotes in a lot of matchups. It can promote more engagement because it's a small stage. Now, the problem was being on having the high ground or being underneath the left platform made dealing with you very hard. Being down that slant made it kind of hard for you. Being up or down that slant, depending on your matchup, made it really difficult to interact because you may just not have your hit. If you were standing on that slope, your hitbox does not like slope up with you, or if you're just below the slope, your hitbox would not obviously hit on top of the slope, so it would just whiff, and then you would get punished for that. Even if horizontally, it would have been spaced perfectly fine. Because of the slant, you would miss. Like, for instance, if Marth were to walk up to that slant and down tilt right next to it, it would horizontally hit that person, but because they are upwards on the slant, it will whiff. It will go through the stage into the slant, and then you would get punished. So that allowed for a little bit, especially against characters like Diddy or projectile control characters that could really oppress you in terms of stage control because of the slants and the platform slightly above you. Would make dealing with you really hard if you were underneath that platform and just controlling that space. So a lot of people really, once again, we tried it, did not work very well. I don't think it was as bad as Bowser's Castle because the platform heights it wasn't like you couldn't reach the platforms, and the small stage once again means in a lot of matchups you could get some interesting gameplay and a lot of interaction, but it just didn't stick and was not very playable in a lot of matchups. So moving on, I want to talk about this stage. I actually like this stage. I actually like this stage. I like Distant Planet. Distant Planet, honestly, I would not be shocked if Distant Planet was made legal in doubles. Honestly, I would be fine with Distant Planet legal in doubles. I don't know if it's necessary. I don't know if it's a necessary addition we need to make. But honestly, like, if it were to become standard, you'd not hear me complaining. I kind of like this stage. It's big, so it's not too cluttered for doubles. And it's, once again, flat. It does have the Delphinos problem with the walls on the side, but it lacks the platform inconsistencies. So I think that makes it a lot more playable. The blast zones aren't so extreme. The blast zones on the side are pretty big from the center of the stage, but from the sides, they're actually really close. So you're not going to have too many people living off the side that often. The top is still pretty high, so the blast zones are pretty big. It would obviously it'd be a big stage, and I don't know if that's necessary for doubles. We already have Delphinos and Dreamland as big stages for doubles, so I don't think it's necessary. But I honestly think it's fine. It doesn't have inconsistencies to it. It's a pretty consistent stage layout, and it's not, and because there's no top platform, it means that circle camping is not really going to happen. There can be camping on those top leaves, but, well, actually, no, I don't think, no, the leaves aren't in the new version. I think it's just those two. No, I don't remember. It's been so long. But if the leaves are there, then you do have a little bit of camping potential right there. But if they're not, then you don't. And I think the stage is really good. But once again, the reason why it's not legal in singles is it's way too big. The stage is huge. Incredibly huge, and not even like FD kind of huge. The thing is, like, FD is huge, but once again, it's easy to corner people on FD, so it makes that big, how large that stage is a little bit more of a factor. Distant Planet, because of the platforms, it just kind of means that there's a lot of room for people to just run around, and I don't really think it's necessary. Once again, fun stage, and that's why I put it in the B tier, and it has that good consistency to it, but, you know, just a little bit too big, I think. I think that's why it has the Castlevania stage problem. Vampire Castle or whatever it was called. Has that problem. Just way too big. And that's kind of the problem. Let me see what's going on in chat. I see it going crazy. Does the stage? Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, you're right. That makes sense too. The ledges are a little bit slanted. But honestly, like, there's already stages that are kind of like that, like Smashville. So I don't think it's too big of a problem. But I kind of see what you're talking about. The ledges, there's a little bit of a slant here. They're not entirely box-shaped like Delphinos. There's a little bit of a slant near the ledges that can make grabbing it a little bit weird. But like I said, Dreamland and Smashville and Battlefield kind of have those slants as well. And I don't think they're too big of a problem in terms of screwing any characters over. Or it's not unfamiliar is what I think. Yeah, it can make it really hard. I agree. It can make it a little bit difficult, for sure. But I don't think it's not unfamiliar, and I think you could definitely work around it. It can definitely be annoying, though, 100%. So moving on, Lilac Castle. I'm going to put it right I really don't like Lilac Castle. Or Lilac Castle. I don't really like Lilac a lot. I'm actually going to put it in the D tier, but I'm going to put it above Bowser's Castle. I don't think it's that bad. Now, the problem with Lilac is, one, those ledges down here. These slants are not the same as these slants where they curve up. These curve down. And that makes this, and because there's no wall to ride up, it makes recoveries here. It has the Brawl FD and Melee Battlefield problem, where getting Battlefielded or getting Pineappled, whatever you want to call that, is super, super common, and it's extremely hard to deal with. It makes ledges really jank on the stage, especially with the curvature downwards, and the tri-platform here is interesting, putting the third platform in the middle, but it gives it a problem kind of like Fountain's problem, where there's just platforms everywhere, and they're always in your way. And that means that it feels cluttered. And if you are good at sharking under platforms, or if you don't have options to deal with shield drop, then you're kind of screwed, because that's just going to be happening all the time. This is all about the platform interaction, and if you can't utilize that, if you can't utilize being underneath the platform or utilize shield dropping to your fullest, you're screwed. And if you have trouble getting off of these platforms, if you have trouble getting down from these platforms, it's over. There's not much you can do. There's no top platform to escape to. You can't really get out of there. And because there's platforms everywhere, you can constantly be sharked, and that adds to the problem. I don't think the stage is very fair. In all intents and purposes, I think the stage was one of the more exploitable stages in terms of matchups. It just too many the platforms were just too in your way. You know what I mean? It's got the problem with this, but it's got the problem with FOD and Metal Cavern, but way more. There's just always a platform there that could be in your way of doing something, and that kind of would make it a little bit more annoying to deal with. So moving on, Norfair. I also hate Norfair. It'll go here. Once again, I don't think it's as bad as Lilac. I don't think it's that crazy. Now, Lilac has a different, or Norfair has a different problem. One, it has the Bowser problem of the stage looks ugly, the lava looks ugly, and it's hard to look at for that long. Hence why later on in the early 3.6, there was a mod for this stage called Metroid Lab. If you're an old school 3.6 player, you will know what I'm talking about. It made this stage, it took away the lava and made it in like a laboratory, kind of like the background of, imagine the background of the other Metroid stage where it flips. Imagine the stage where it flips upside down. The Metroid stage where it flips upside down has the big dude in the background, but take out the dude, and it obviously doesn't flip. It had that in the background, so that made it a little bit more visually pleasing to the eyes. It made it a little bit hurt your eyes less staring at it, but the base stage looked pretty bad. It looked pretty bad. And that I can't even like defend it like I did with Bowser's Castle, you know, defending the modder who made it and it looked nice. No, screw Norfair, it looks ugly. And whoever made it needs to burn in a fiery pit like the stage. Now, just talking about how the gameplay works, this stage is campy as hell. We all have seen 3.02 Mario camping pills. This was Mewtwo King's counter pick during 3.02 when he played Mario. He would just go to Norfair and go to one of the platforms and stay there forever and make the game go for 7 minutes and beat you, and everyone hated it. On top of that, even in, and that was in 3.02, even in 3.6, it was very easy to circle camp because the platforms did not help you at all in any scenario. In terms of reaching people, they went too high and going too high. Yeah, Frigate Orphean, thank you. Frigate Orphean is the stage where they kind of got the background from. But, back to what I was saying, it was just, it allowed for too much camping. And that made the game a little bit frustrating to play on that stage. Honestly, the size of the stage was not too big of a problem. It was a little bit bigger than you would think looking at the picture, but it honestly was pretty playable. And the blast zones weren't too crazy. But the platforms are the biggest problem. They have the Delfino effect of basically getting to randomly moving to points where they were pretty much uninteractable by a lot of characters. So it just made it very frustrating to play on, and I'm glad it's gone. This stage hasn't been illegal for a very long time. I'm obviously going to put it right here. I think it's better than that, just because it's a little less cluttered. But it has its own problems. For starters, the stage is a little bit lopsided, and that just kind of makes it odd. It's lopsided. This center platform is not in the center. It's a little bit to the right. And the fact that this right platform extends pretty far off the stage means that you're not really going to be interacting with it unless you are stuck there or you're camping. And that kind of makes it makes this a problem. It can allow for a lot of platform assists off the side. That makes it a little bit more frustrating to play on, hence why it hasn't been legal in a while. I think the last time it was legal was Aftershock, like 2015, at like the end of 3.5, I believe. Some really long time ago, and for good reason. We have a lot of stages now that are perfectly fine. This stage kind of hit irrelevancy, I would say. It wasn't used enough, and it was not favored enough by the community to really stay on the list as of 3.6, and it took a dive. I honestly don't think it's too bad in comparison to the other stages that I've shown, but obviously you can see that it is below every other stage on the list that is actually tournament legal, so of course it is just kind of out due to that factor alone. Now, we have already talked about Metal Cavern, so I am going to leave this one just off the list. I think it's just a little bit irrelevant. We have a better version of it. But lastly, I want to talk about this stage. It's going to go right here. Now, Yoshi's has a problem. Yoshi's is just invalidated by this stage. I do like playing on Yoshi's a bit more than Wario Ware. I think I prefer tri-plat layout, especially where the top platform isn't too campable, which Yoshi's is a lot shorter, so of course it's a little bit less campable to play on Yoshi's with that top platform. It's a little bit glitchy. You can fall into that little alcove where where Randall will go into, and I think you can get inside of that and it can mess with it. It's a little glitchy. And obviously Randall, some people do like Randall. I love Randall. Some people don't. It's kind of up to personal preference in terms of Randall. But I really like Yoshi's Story. I really do. I think it's a fun stage to play on. I think the walls add to recovery, but not too much. I think that once again the blast zone on the low side doesn't go too low to where it makes it obnoxious. It mostly adds to cool potential that you have on the stage, and there's a reason people love it in Melee. It is just a fun stage to play on. It's small and invokes interaction because it's a lot harder to camp on it. The platforms are usable, they're not cluttered, or at least in most cases I would say they're not very cluttered like they are on Fountain or anything like that. And the top platform allows for combo extensions and finishers while not being used to assist too many recoveries, so it makes the edge play a little bit more consistent in terms with other stages. I honestly love Yoshi's, and I would honestly be super down to turn it on in friendlies playing with anybody. But I think that Wario Ware is a different layout, and it needs to be used more, but like I said, I don't want to be too biased, so I think that WarioWare has a place in the stage list, and I don't think that it should be removed. But I love Yoshi's Story, and honestly, I did like playing at Laser having that on. I was kind of skeptical at first, but I did kind of like it, not gonna lie. Shoutouts to Extreme and the guys at Laser. But anyways, that should be it, guys. Here's the list. That should end the video and the stream. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. I know it was on short notice because of yesterday's cancellation and everything, but thanks for sticking with me, guys. I will be tuning